Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/Riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. On today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have guest Tom Pardikes. He's the co-founder and CEO of gameSense Sports, a science-based athlete performance company developing the next generation of decision-making tools. Okay, let's see here. I'm waiting for my wife to leave the podcast room here because she's over there making noise, so I'm kind of stalling for just 2 seconds.
It's funny because you see like these late night show hosts doing everything from their houses these days.
Right.
Who's helping out, Wives are running the cameras.
Totally true. Tom Pardikes on the Riderflex podcast. How you doing, Tom?
Doing great, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being on. Cool business you got going on. I love it. When I was doing my homework, I was thinking to myself, wow, I wish I had that for my boys when they were growing up, because they played sports, and so love it. Can't wait to get into it. But tell us about yourself personally first. Let's do some history, right? Some background, some family, some school. Tell us about Tom.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, I was actually born, we'll go way back, California, Eureka, California.
Okay.
Where I would end up going to college one day, many years later. I don't know if you've ever been in the Pacific Northwest. Eureka's way up there.
Yeah.
So it's about 6 hours north of San Francisco in the Redwoods. Beautiful place.
Beautiful area. Yeah.
But my dad grew up here in Denver, and they decided to come back to Denver to be around his parents to just provide support for raising a child. And so I grew up out in Aurora, Colorado.
Okay, so high school, Aurora High School.
Rangeview, Colorado, Rangeview Raiders. I don't think they even call themselves the Raiders these days. They're like the Jets or something like that. I think it was offensive for the Raiders, yeah.
Okay, and you were an athlete in high school, I'm guessing?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's what I did, is I played sports. I was kind of a nerd jock, a weird combination. I would spend my lunch hours in the library, and then after school, I would be always playing sports. So I grew up playing every sport I could. Started off with soccer, and then I played football, and then the soccer people said, hey, maybe you should stop playing soccer because I think you're a little too rough now. So
Were you bigger? Like, were you a little larger than average kid, or what was your size?
Yeah, I always played up. So I started my career strangely as a center and a nose guard, which was absolutely ridiculous.
Really?
Because then I ended up my career playing safety and running back and safety going forward. So, but I love to hit. That was my claim to fame.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
I was the oldest. My brother is 7 years younger than me, which is a big difference, but we're best friends. He was a heck of an athlete, probably better than I was. Yeah, so we grew up together.
Okay.
Every day, out in the street, playing baseball, playing football, playing basketball, those kind of days.
Now, was your dad an athlete, or were your mom, or both? Or who'd you get that from?
It's a really good question. My dad was not. He never even made I don't think he even made the JV team.
He's listening. He's gonna listen. He's gonna listen to this episode. He's gonna be like, "Did you really have to bring that up?"
He admits it. He said, "I don't know where you two came from." My uncle was a really good football player. He played down at Arizona State for a bit, and then my mom also ran track throughout high school. So
okay.
I don't know.
All right.
Something there.
Similar situation. My youngest boy was a pretty good football player and played quarterback in high school, and I never even made varsity team, like, on anything. And so of course he knew that. So when I was trying to, like, give him some dad coaching,
like, whatever.
He was a junior and a senior, he'd be like, "Dad, please." He's like, "You don't even." Anyway, so you went on to play college football too, I think, for a little bit.
I did. So in high school I played basketball, baseball, and football, and then I stopped playing basketball and lifted, basically.
Okay.
And then out of high school, I kind of got burnt out because I was always playing football and baseball, and I loved it, but I just didn't care. I really started getting into music,
Okay.
and so I wasn't even thinking about it. I had some scholarship offers, got some interest from other people, some schools, but I didn't care.
All right.
And so I moved out to California, not even thinking about football or anything like that. My parents said they would pay for 1 year. And so I ended up going to San Bernardino because it was the cheapest California school I could find.
And you just wanted to be out. You just wanted to be out west.
I just wanted to be out west. I'd gone back and forth. We were always, so my other family, I almost grew up in Oxnard. I don't know if you know where Oxnard, California is. Ventura. All right on the beach. But they decided, hey, we better go back to that, what we were talking about earlier, where they said, we better go back to Colorado. I don't want this guy to be a beach bum. So I went out to San Bernardino, and San Bernardino, nothing against San Bernardino, but it's not LA. It's not, I mean, it is, I guess it's way out there. It's not the beach, right?
Right.
So that was a little tough. Didn't like it. And then my dad actually suggested, why don't you go see if you like Northern California? So I decided to apply.
Which is a whole different planet almost, really, from San Bernardino.
It should be a completely different state.
Yeah.
It is
totally.
Planet, right?
Yep. Totally agree.
But I loved it. So I went up there, just fell in love with it. It's so beautiful. Mm-hmm. Although I tell you, the first winter I was up there, I thought I was going to kill myself. It was 3 months straight of rain. Yeah. And being a Colorado kid, used to that sunshine. Oh man, it was rough.
Everybody I always talk to that it moves from there, whether it's Portland or Seattle or where you're talking about, that's the first thing they say is, if it just didn't rain all the time, it'd be the greatest place on earth.
But if it didn't rain all the time, it wouldn't be so beautiful.
Yeah, right.
Yep. Trade-off, right?
Yep.
So anyways, I went up north and I ended up rooming with a football player. Okay. And I kind of just got the bug again. Like, you know what? I can still play this, and I wanted to. So I walked on.
Oh, wow.
No scholarship, no nothing. And ended up playing that first year, started lifting it again. And then next year got a scholarship, and that was kind of the rest of the story.
Nice.
And after that, I came back to Colorado, was still interested in playing. One of my old football coaches, Mike Hageman, was good friends with the Overland coach, who knew a guy named Sam Pagano. And I don't know if you know his sons, Paganos.
Yes.
And Sam's kind of a legendary coach, coached at Fairview in Boulder for a long time. And he said, well, we know a bunch of European teams that are looking for players, kind of an ambassador. You're not talking about super high level, but there was former NFL, Canadian, bunch of college football players over there. So what the heck? So send some film. So I sent some film, and like a month later, I found myself in Helsinki trying to deal with the midnight sun and playing football.
How about that? Which is cool, right? Because you were how old? 21 or something? How old were you?
21, exactly.
I mean, were you single?
Oh yeah.
Yes, single guy, 21, get to go overseas, play football. I mean, come on, that's pretty cool, right?
It was one of the greatest times of my life. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, awesome.
So I got to play in Finland for a year. Actually tore my ACL, but rehabbed it. Then Sam invited me back. He got a job with an Italian team. So then I went down to Italy, and I ended up staying in Italy for the next 2 years playing down there.
Cool. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
That was a great experience. And then coming out of that, I realized that, you know what, if I'm going to do something here, I better get back into school. If that was my passion, before I killed too many brain cells with football.
Now your BA though, when you got your bachelor's, it was anthropology, right?
Right. You're absolutely right.
Okay. Now, so when you're playing in Italy, are you thinking, I know I need to go back to school, I'm not sure what I want to do, or did you have an idea what you wanted to do then?
I think most people have. In fact, I don't trust people that know exactly what they want to do.
Right.
I think
that's so true.
No, so I started going back because you're right. anthropology. Although during that anthropology, I also started taking a lot of physics courses. I was very interested in that. So I've always been interested in behavior.
Okay.
And why animals and human animals particularly do what they do and how they think. So I went back and started thinking about, all right, I'm interested in this. And I'm also interested in religion, because that's a really powerful behavior. So I applied to a bunch of schools, ended up going to New Mexico State, where I studied basically native practices of the indigenous people down there.
Wow.
Particularly the Hopi. So there's a bunch of Papuan people down there who were their ancestors were what we call the Anasazi. So that was a fascinating time down there in the desert. I don't know if you've been down deep
I have.
in the Chihuahuan Desert, but beautiful, right by white sands.
Scholarship? Are you paying your way and working through school, or how are you doing it?
That's exactly what I had to do. So I still am paying off some money. I was fortunate to get everything else paid off during my quest in academia, but took out a loan. Was working at the student center, opening and closing as a manager, a building manager, and doing anthropology. So 2 years I was there.
Now, when you got there, though, the cool thing is when you were out meeting people and you're getting dates and things like that, you could say, "Hey, listen, I played football in Italy. I don't think any other guy around here did that." So, that helped.
That card a little bit sometimes.
Yeah. I bet your friends are like, "Jesus, here you go. He's bringing this up again." It's pretty funny. Okay, cool. All right, go ahead. So, working your way through, getting your master's.
Getting a master's, loving it. But at the same time, I'm thinking, you know what? This is cool, but this is qualitative. It's neat to think about the brain. And really, I was just thinking about consciousness and behavior at that point.
Okay.
But the more interesting thing was the impetus of that, which was really the nervous system in the brain. So coming out of anthropology, actually, during my second year, I said, okay, I'm not done with this. I need to go understand a little bit more about neuroscience. So we took the GRE, started that whole process again, trying to finish up my master's, applying for grad schools.
Okay.
And I was basically looking at neuroscience programs and biological psychology programs. Went and toured around to a bunch of schools and ended up going to Virginia Tech and worked with my mentor, Bruce Friedman, who was an expert in the autonomic nervous system. So I don't know if you're familiar with the old ANS.
No.
It's basically what controls our body. That's primarily non-conscious. So it's controlling your heart, it's controlling your skin, like galvanic skin response. So how much are your pores opening and closing based on adrenaline, all those kind of chemicals that are constantly running through our bodies. And it's kind of, it's in the background, but it is the root of almost everything we're doing. So that was really fascinating to me.
And it sounds like and now you're headed towards a doctorate, and it almost sounds like you were doing it because you're just fascinated and interested in it, and you didn't really know how it was going to apply professionally yet. Is that accurate?
You're exactly right, Steve. I mean, I think that's always guided me, and that's for good or for bad.
Okay.
It's okay. What are my passions? What do I want to do? And damn the torpedoes, right? Let the cards fall where they may. And that's exactly right. So from there, we started studying that. That I had a lot of catching up to do. I'd never done much biological stuff. Certainly, I'd never done any psychology before. But I loved it. It was a pleasure, a joy to study that. And out of that, I really was getting in, and I've always been interested in martial arts and the kind of meditation and Taoism and philosophy like that.
Okay.
And so I started studying meditation, and I was really interested in how these monks could do things that were not possible. I was reading stuff about Hindu monks and practitioners who were able to go into earthen pits and be covered for days on end, not eating, no defecation, no urination, no nothing, and be able to slow down their heart rates to like 30 beats a minute, almost like a hibernation state. And so those things really fascinated me. I've always been interested in those kind of weird anomalies out there. So I decided to that was going to be what I was going to study, was how are these guys basically taking control of autonomic functions? How do they do these things that are primarily non-conscious? How do they
And if
gain conscious control?
and if everybody could figure that out, couldn't we heal ourselves if we were sick?
You know, I don't know how far that goes, but certainly if you look at healing and the ability to relax and remain calm and breathe and
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even control immunological responses, yeah.
Reason I ask that question is I'm always hearing doctors say, "Well, you know, stress causes all these other, you know, all these other problems."
Yeah.
And so when I hear that, I go, "Okay, so your mind can cause you to be sick and have pain. If that's true, can it? Can it heal you too?" Anyway, not to go down a rabbit hole, but I
I
always
think
wonder
you're
about that.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I mean, you think about, you said it, stress causes this. Well, stress is a lot of things. Stress can mean a lot of things. I can put stress on a board, stress on a body, but stress to us is we tend to give it a psychological connotation,
Yeah,
and
right.
correctly, uh, but it's a physical thing. We're releasing specific hormones
Right.
that are good in the short term. That's why stress is good. You need stress,
Mm,
but in the long term, prolonged stress is not good.
gotcha.
It passes even from generation to generation.
Mm, mm,
So
mm.
I think you're right on there. If everybody would learn to see the world a little bit differently, maybe not, how to reshape specific actions and goings on in the world, it would be a better place, I think.
You know, yeah, I think so. I think so. You know, one more thing, and I'll let you. I want to jump back into because you're about to start your professional career now after school. But one more thing on that, a quick example. My kidney areas were hurting me, like my lower back, my kidneys. I didn't know I thought, well, maybe I got a kidney infection. I don't know.
Right.
All I know is I have pain back there, just pain for a couple of weeks. I finally called the doctor, and I was like, hey, can you check, maybe I can do like a urine sample, check my kidneys. Fascinating. He calls me, he says, you're fine. And he's like, I don't see anything. He's like, it's probably just maybe some lower back pain or arthritis. So calm down. Guess what? A couple of days later, and for the next week, I just stopped thinking about it and I'm fine. And it doesn't hurt anymore. And I thought to myself, isn't it just fascinating how powerful your mind can be? Because as soon as he told me that, I let my mind tell me, hey, calm down. You're fine. Like, stop stressing about it. And sure enough, the pain started going away. Anyway.
Exactly right. I mean, it's a lot easier said than done, number one, because it's there for pain is a great example. That's a completely psychological phenomena. We're experiencing that. But obviously people can feel that in a lot of different ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's fascinating. That mind-body connection. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so you get your doctorate. Now, walk us into your early career, and then kind of how you somehow went from yeah, this career stuff's great, being an employee is okay, but I think I want to start my own business. Go ahead.
Well, number one, I've always marched to the beat of a different drummer. My parents will test that. Okay. So coming out of graduate school, I had a couple postdoc interviews lined up, and in the spring of the year I was going to graduate, I met a girl.
All right.
And she was the one. And so basically I decided, you know what, I can't move away again. I was going to go maybe to Oregon or a couple other possibilities. If I was going to give this a go, this whole marriage and love thing, I better do it. And I was older because you remember after undergraduate, I went and played around for a couple of years. So
That's right. Yeah.
I got a master's and then another PhD. So
Yep.
I was pretty old at that point.
Yep. Gotcha.
So I decided to move back to Denver, which I loved anyways, and give it a go with this girl who's now my wife.
Was she from Denver? Was she from Colorado?
Yeah, she was from Aurora too. Her dad and my dad taught together at Smoky Hill High School, which is a high school out in Aurora.
Oh.
But I never knew her. I knew her brother.
Okay. That's how you met her? Okay.
Yeah, basically. And this is another thing. How do you meet her? Well, my mom hooked us up. My mom met her at she was making purses at the time, my wife.
Okay.
And she'd invited a bunch of her mother's friends over to check out these purses. And my
Oh.
mom chatting her up and said, you know what, you'd be perfect for my son. And I
W-
think we were both kind of skeptical, like, all right, whatever. But
Well, I
those
was.
best.
So your wife's had the little entrepreneurial bug early
Oh
on there
yes,
too. So okay. Oh, so that
absolutely,
was all right. All right.
absolutely,
Very
she
cool.
does.
All right. Cool. So
Um,
move to Colorado. Yeah. Go ahead.
that's Colorado, and then so what the heck am I going to do with myself? I don't have a job. Um, and I said, okay, well, I know about the brain a bit, and I know about sports a bit.
Okay.
So the first inclination is performance psychology, sports psychology, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of area, helping athletes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started reaching out to sports psychologists around the, the Denver region and talking about, can I come talk to you and see if there's any possibility of working together? And I met a couple people, Jennifer Bugg and Dan Traffin were two of my mentors coming out and kind of took me under their wing and brought me into more of the clinical side of things, which I had never done. I was experimental psychologist, which I really liked. And I would still bring in all of my equipment into it. I'm the guy who hooks electrodes up to you to see what's going on. So the biofeedback, which was very promising in sports performance. So I started going that realm, started doing a bunch of like neuropsychological assessments, and really get into all of that. But realizing that if I wanted to be a clinical psychologist, I'd have to go back to school to do it. And that did not really, because I was only experimental. That was all I was graded out for.
Mm.
And that did not appeal to me very much.
Okay.
And during that time, I was really getting into the performance side of sports. And I wanted to not be a practitioner of that anymore, but to apply the knowledge into making a product that other practitioners could start to use. And the first thing that really started coming to mind for me was the decision making, this ability to read and react quickly to scenarios on the field, or on the court, on the pitch, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Because nobody was doing anything like that. Traditional sports psychology is goal setting, positive self-talk,
Mm-hmm.
autonomic and emotional regulation, those kind of things, which are cool, but not what we're talking about here. And I think any
Gotcha.
athlete understands that innately, that you're constantly moving around, making non-conscious decisions even if your guy's trying to juke you out, okay, that's all non-conscious decision making. To the point where, should I shoot this or pass right now based on what I'm seeing?
Okay.
And just surveying the landscape, understood that, gosh, nobody's doing any of this. There's a big opportunity here to get into it. So I started doing some research and say, okay, who else has done this? And certainly people have thought about this for a while.
Okay.
There have been other things like flashcards, flashing up specific numbers or names and trying to remember that and thinking that would equate to things. And I ran across something called multiple object tracking, which is the idea that you can track multiple objects simultaneously. And this is analogous to, I don't know, football players, basketball players, having to keep a lot of information visually up in your mind and then react accordingly to them.
Okay.
And this is a company called NeuroTracker. And through NeuroTracker, I met a guy who's a dear friend and still a great guy and part of our company now, Dr. Len Zykowski, who is the godfather of modern sports psychology. And we hit it off right away. And we were sucked into another company where he was kind of the ambassador, reaching out to people, and I became the product manager, figuring out, okay, what products we're going to build and how we're going to bring these to market.
And you were an employee there.
I was a partner there. We got some equity, weren't getting paid very much, sometimes not
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
And that went south.
Okay.
That's an unfortunate story where Len lost $60,000, and I convinced my brother to invest $10,000, which he promptly lost as well. I didn't have any money, or I would have probably invested and lost it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And from there,
some good experiences and learnings there, though, right? I mean,
always
yeah.
are, right?
Yeah.
And that was a really good experience. That was my first foray truly into business.
Okay.
And there's stuff that I would repeat out of that, and stuff I would definitely not repeat out of that.
Yeah. Okay.
And that definitely gave me an understanding of to treat people well always be honest with people, and to be transparent with your business partners.
Yep.
And that was not what that individual was doing.
Gotcha.
So anyways, we were able to finagle our way out of that business and jump onto another company who was interested in what we were doing. And this guy was very interested in virtual baseball.
Okay. Can I stop you? Can I just stop you right there? Because I just want to ask you a question. Are you married at this time?
Yes.
Okay. So was there any conversations where, what's your wife's name?
Sarah.
Sarah, was Sarah ever like, hey, so are you gonna like make money and have like a regular job pretty soon, or?
Let's keep those conversations. We're actually doing pretty well now. I can at least keep things afloat. She's my biggest supporter, no doubt about that. Lucky for me, she's got a good job, always has had a good job.
That's
and
cool.
is able to support me doing what I'm doing. And
well,
that she'll get her chance once I'm done.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about this early period here when you were first married and you did that one little startup and then that didn't work and now you're over here.
Right.
And she's like, okay, I married this guy. He was a great athlete, good looking guy. He's got a doctorate. What's going to happen with this? Okay. Yeah. Anyway, okay, cool. So you can join this other company. Go ahead.
I'm sure she had her second thoughts about that. We stayed with it.
Oh man, it's pretty good.
So anyways, so we joined this other company. This guy was into virtual baseball. So the idea is interesting. It's saying we are going to create a 3D kind of VR experience where people can throw and hit, but they're going to compete against each other virtually. So that information is going to be taken in and then they're going to hit it and all that. Sounds awesome. But I think it was a little too pie in the sky and way too far out there.
Okay.
And so I pushed back to this guy and said, my role was basically director of product development. And I said, this is all cool, but we've got this diamond in the rough sitting here. And that is this decision-making, this fast, non-conscious decision-making. And he was not interested in that. He said, well, people can make this readily. There's no IP around it. People don't even know what this is. I said, well, yeah, but we're creating a market right now. Didn't matter. Fell on deaf ears. So he quickly disbanded and said, I'm not paying you guys anymore, and I'm going into this virtual baseball, which, as far as I know, never happened.
All right.
So let me rewind a little bit. I'm studying these, all of the stuff I was talking about. Fast reactive decision making, what we call perceptual cognitive decision making, which just basically means you're never really conscious of it. You perceive and then you do. And the most obvious one to me was this baseball, hitting a baseball, which is an impossible task. So how do we replicate this and make this a product, basically? And I started studying the people that were doing this. A guy's named Rob Gray came up. He's down at Arizona State, and we still know Rob well. And then the name that kept on coming up was this guy, Peter Fatty.
Okay.
And I really liked what he was doing. And so I went to Len Zykowski. I said, I'm studying this, looking into this baseball pitch recognition and trying to replicate the experience of hitting a baseball. And I said, okay, well, I know this Peter Fatty. Should we meet with him? Well, yeah, sure. So we met each other on a tennis court of all places down in Naples, Florida, and we filmed a tennis pro doing serves.
I bet I know right where that tennis court is. Matter of fact.
Yeah, yeah,
I know right where that is. I've been there a couple of times. Yeah, go ahead.
Pretty nice place.
Yeah, sure is.
Florida, right? Yeah. So we filmed this tennis pro serving, and we all kind of said, okay, this is something. We can do something with this. It doesn't need to be 3D. And this is an interesting understanding about how 3D and VR work. Because as our eyes, we have two disparate images, right? That's what makes us able to see that something is in front of it or something's behind it, because we have just two separate kind of images, and our brains put it together and say, okay, this is kind of the depth perception going on. As an object gets further and further away from it, you have this kind of a vanishing line. If you remember, I'm doing it there. In art, do you remember a vanishing line in art?
Barely, but yes.
If you want to show like a three-dimensional kind of thing, everything vanishes to a point. Same is true with your eyes. So as an object gets further and further away, the differences between what your left eye and your right eye is seeing become negligible. And that's about 20 feet. So when we're making these decisions, that ball's, in the case of like a tennis court, it's like 70 feet away, 66 feet from a baseball perspective. So that 3D VR stuff doesn't do anything for you because you don't see any difference. It's 2D basically. So we figured that, man, we can go into this. And VR was still pie in the sky. I think it still is, truthfully, pie in the sky. We're still a bit away from it being truly accessible and really working like you want it to work. Mm-hmm. So anyway, so we can make a product of this pretty easily. This can be on a phone to do this. And that's what we brought to this guy who wanted to do the virtual baseball. So long story short, when he said no, man, this was our third start, or this is my third startup at that point. And again, my wife's like, what the hell are you doing? We just said, we're going to try this on our own. And so we formed gameSense.
How'd you come up with the name?
That's Peter's name. And it makes perfect sense. It's like a sixth sense, right? But it's your non-conscious understanding of the game.
I see. Okay. Yeah. All right. How did you bootstrap it? Just you and your co-founder?
Absolutely. Bootstrapped it. We're able to get a couple friends and family loans, $10,000, $5,000 here or there to build the first prototype.
Okay. And then I was going to say you use that early money. Oh, sorry. You use that early money to pay developers, basically.
Basically.
Yeah.
And I brought in an old friend of mine who I went to Virginia Tech with, I was in a band with, to be the
cool.
CTO.
Hey man, let's get the band back together. What are you working on? Well, tell me what you're working on. And then I can almost hear how the conversation went. He's like, well, what's it pay? And you're like, well, nothing, but it's going to be really fun.
Exactly. and he's still with us, Paul Kohoff, great guy. And he's our CTO. He's developed everything. And we all have a really good working relationship. So yeah, he helped us build our prototype. And then I was tasked with building salesperson and the business guy, which I had no business doing. And I just went out and kind of because I'd done a little bit of sales, but not much. And sales, in my opinion, is just repetition and grit and just getting out there again and again and again and again. So that's what I did. I woke up every morning and just called college teams. And that first fall, we convinced 8 teams to give us about $6,000 each to give them this very, very, very bare bones MVP with only 7 pitchers.
Okay.
But they loved it because they'd never seen anything like it, and they knew that it was important.
And now, was it this patented, protected, like a super technology? I mean, or is this just is this a speed to market play right here? Where
that's precisely right.
Okay, all right.
It's like we came up with a mnemonic device. I want you to. What's the one where you're looking around in a room and you're trying to remember specific things with objects in the room, and you're associating those? It's like basically it's a heuristic almost. Okay. So what we're using here is something called temporal occlusion, and there's nothing patent about it. It's out there in the world.
Okay.
All temporal occlusion means, there's also spatial occlusion, but temporal occlusion just means, all right, I'm going to show you a scene, and I'm not going to show you the whole scene.
Let me do that one more. Hold on just a second, Tom. Temporal inclusion. I'm going to pause it. I'm going to just ask you that. I want to do a little clip in the video there because that's a good one. I'm going to just say temporal inclusion. Occlusion. Sorry.
That's right.
Temporal occlusion. Now, what does that mean?
It's a fancy way for saying we're going to limit your information. All right. And so in temporal occlusion, we show you a scene, but we don't show you the entirety of the scene. We cut it off before the completion, and we have the user anticipate the outcome based on early visual cues. Okay. All right. So this makes perfect sense when you think about it. For very fast reactions, you have to initiate that action well before you actually have to engage with whatever it is you're going to do, right?
I'm not a baseball expert, but I've always from what I understand, that's how the hitters do it. They're starting their swing before they know for sure, and they're having to make a judgment call of some kind.
and you have to, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that ball's moving at 90 miles, well, some 80, 90 miles an hour, whatever. That ball's moving fast. So in order to hit it, you have to start your swing at about a third of ball flight.
Okay.
You have to initiate your swing.
Okay.
So that's not very much space, right?
Right.
Maybe 200 milliseconds they have to initiate after the release of the ball.
Okay. So
And
I see. Yeah.
very common. You can think of all the applications for this.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we all know those players too that are out there that are seeing things that other people aren't seeing. They're moving before everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
They're seeing that, Messi or something in soccer. He sees that opening before anybody else sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you get good at this is another thing that was very intriguing about this whole aspect, is that you're not born with this. Nobody's born with this stuff. You have to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way you learn it is through thousands of hours of experience. So anybody can get good. It's not like we're, lifting. Yeah, you can get stronger by lifting, and that will make you a better athlete. But certain people have genetic proclivities that make them gain or build muscle mass quicker than others.
Is this part of the reason why the best football players and baseball players are commonly known to just watch hours and hours and hours of tape? And does that tie to that or no?
Absolutely, it is.
Okay.
Absolutely. And the other way is you got to get experience. So you got to be on the practice field. You got to get game-like experience to replicate that kind of stuff. Mm. Film is essentially an analog of that. It's an approximation. And how we watch film, I mean, I grew up watching a lot of film. And you don't really do that until you get to the next serious level.
Yeah.
But you should. But how we do film is boring and not very efficient.
Right.
I mean, we watch something, okay, you see they come out, and we're talking about football. Come on, this trips right here. This guy, look, he's backed up off the line right now. They're going to do a crossing route right now. Or maybe the idiosyncrasies like, let's watch this lineman. When it's a pass play, he's leaning back in his stance a little bit.
Yeah.
So that's something we can pick up on.
Yeah.
But we don't focus on that kind of stuff. And you could do it a lot more efficiently. Even a quiz and kind of a drill and practice quiz nature is better than just how we do it. Mm. Watch it, rewind it, watch it again. And then the temporal occlusion adds another element to that, where we're forcing your brain to pick up on those early visual cues. We're not giving you any more cues, so you've got to pick it up there.
All right, and so you get it product ready enough to, even though it's still in, I don't know, beta or whatever, but you get it ready enough for these 8 or 9 colleges to say, yeah, we'll use it, and they paid you just a little bit of money for like some administrative fee or whatever whatever you called it. and they started using it with their pitchers or with their, well, I guess they're using it with all their players because everybody hits. Okay.
Yeah, except pitchers don't hit generally.
Yeah.
So we got lucky that we knew somebody in an independent minor league frontier league.
Okay.
So we were getting pitchers from these guys, which these are college pro pitchers.
All right.
We're using them as our models for these hitters. And then we were able to start filming pitchers when they came into their ballpark to use as well.
Did you have to pay the pitchers to film them or no?
Yes, but I would say we got a pretty good deal from them.
Okay.
A couple $100 looks really attractive to these guys.
Right. I was just about to say, hey, bro, can I just pay $100 to like film you for a second? Very cool. I like it. All right, cool. All right. So now the colleges are using it, and can you give us let's do this. I think now's a good moment. Can you give us the 3 to 5 minute elevator pitch for the product and for the business? Just kind of give it to us like you were pitching for, doing the 5-minute elevator pitch for cash or something.
Sure. Okay. So GameSense, I mean, we're trying to change the world as for athletes, because we want to fundamentally alter how athletes train. Cognitive skills are just as important as the physical skills, yet nobody's paying attention to them. And our goal at GameSense is to give all athletes all over the world from all different sports access to a tool that trains these fast, reactive decision-making skills. And we can do that because we don't need VR right now. We'll get into that kind of stuff as it goes, but right now we can democratize this by putting this on your phone. So somebody in
Sure.
Africa, somebody in China, somebody in Jersey can get better at these skills. So
And
we created apps to
okay.
build this. The problem, though, back to it, is that these skills develop very, very slowly. And that is because they rely on game-like experience. And it's tough to get game-like experience consistently. And also, you're focused on other things when you're.
Right.
Uh, but nobody is even measuring these things. And these are incredibly important to your success as an athlete.
Hmm.
And it becomes more and more important as the game speeds up. So as you begin to get into higher and higher levels, the game starts to speed up. You need to be making these decisions. You just simply don't have the luxury to sit around and think too much. You have to make these are bam, bam kind of decisions.
Right.
So these are important skills. But again, nobody's even measuring these skills, much less training them right now. Have
Interesting.
you ever heard of anything like this, Steve?
No, I have not. When I was doing my homework on you and GameSense, by the way, it's gamesensesports.com.
Yep.
When I looked it up, my first reaction was, okay, I've never seen this. My second reaction was, like, Major League Baseball teams and NFL teams haven't like come up with something like this already. That was my next reaction.
That's exactly right.
I'm like, really? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like how have you not done? I mean, we know it's there, it's important, but we haven't really. What we're doing is we're just assuming people get better at this, which they do, but very slowly. It's kind of an incidental learning.
Okay.
Or even more dangerous, people assume that people are born with this. In fact, even the words we use, like we say, if somebody's got a good nose for the ball, they've got good football instinct, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That conveys the idea that, oh yeah, this is innate. They're born with this skill.
Mm-hmm.
No way. No way. You only get good at this through just, again, thousands of hours of practice, seeing how these things play out.
I'm gonna use the Tom Brady example there and go, yeah, I'm pretty sure he wasn't born with all that stuff.
No way.
No way.
Right?
Hours and hours and hours of decades of study and film. Yeah. Okay. All right.
So because there's this huge gap, right? Nobody is studying this stuff. Nobody's measuring the things, much less training these. That's exactly why we created GameSense Sports, is to focus solely on these fast, reactive decision making. Another word we could use is split-second decisions, right? Another word we could use, intuition, right? These are the and then you can start to think about, oh man, this goes well beyond sports, and it sure does. And you as an interviewer understand body language, you understand the tonation or tonality of somebody's voice, and can kind of feel out, okay, what is emotions underlying this person, or what are their motives,
Right. Right.
Certainly military law enforcement, this applies. But right now we're only interested in sports until we can branch out further.
Okay. All right.
So we did GameSense. We created apps that train the brains of athletes to make faster, more accurate decisions.
And what's the business model? Are you getting paid by people that download the app? Are you getting paid by the schools? Walk me through the business model.
Yeah, it's all of the above. So what we've realized is we kind of cut our teeth in B2B.
Okay.
So going out directly to college teams, going out directly to pro teams, and having them pay us. But our goal is to democratize this. So we want to get it to the consumer, right into the hands of the consumer. So we have a B2B, B2C, but really our go-to-market strategy that's evolved in the last 6 months is B2B2C. So we are reaching out to tournament organizers, organizing like entities from the USTA. We work with Australia quite a bit, so we have a partnership with Tennis Australia right now and Softball Australia, where they can now distribute it to all of their members, right? So we're working with a lot of the tournament organizers here in America who are looking for something that differentiates them, gives them the value add. And then what that allows us to do is go directly to their consumers.
I see.
And we're either trying to bake that into their costs, or we give them steep discounts because now we have 5,000 sales, or we do a revenue share with those guys.
I see.
So
Okay.
we feel that lowers our customer acquisition cost. It gives us instant credibility. And it's tough we'd rather give our money to these guys than Facebook or
Mhm.
Google or any of those other guys to do the direct to consumer kind of traditional marketing.
Are you targeting youth and intermediates, or or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. We can help everybody from the most elite professionals down to a 10-year-old, but ultimately our market is in the youth because number one, they can utilize it probably the most. There's the biggest gain to be had
Yep.
there.
Yep.
Number two, the numbers are huge.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we have a
Gotcha.
little saying even, and I don't know if we should probably broadcast this, but it's our saying, pros for show, youth for dough.
Yeah, I mean, it would be great to have a couple of famous baseball players and a couple of teams say that they're using it, but that's not where your revenue is really going to come from. You know, that's a marketing ploy, right? To just
Exactly.
And then that way, when you are pitching to the league president of some baseball club in Colorado, you can say, hey, look, such and such team uses this or whatever. Yeah, it's a sales piece. It's a marketing tool. Gotcha. I've interviewed other entrepreneurs with businesses or software around sports in some way, and usually the conversation goes to, for this thing to make money, it's going to be youth, right? Because what are you going to do? You're going to sell it to 32 NFL teams, and then when you're done with that, then what, right? I mean, there's only
Exactly. 30 MLB teams, 32 NFL. Yeah, very limited market. And even college, you're looking at about 300 Division I schools.
Yeah.
So very limited.
Okay.
We'd rather go with a lower price point and get volume out of that.
Plus, I could see youth. I mean, a junior high school kid, they're on the smartphones all day long, right? So they're probably love the fact that they can sit here and test that. And then so if I'm a high school baseball player, I download the app. I'm practicing these pitches coming at me. I'm like doing stuff on my phone. Is it scoring me? And and as it scores me, do I get to like see how I'm doing against other people? How does that work?
Yeah, we just actually released that. So we have a leaderboard that we put out where now you can compete against other people.
Cool.
And the leaderboard is unique because it's like you're going on the board. So we're going to jump you up to our second to highest level of difficulty, where you're going to see for baseball and softball, you're going to see approximately 1/10 of ball flight, and you're posting to that board, which is publicly available to everybody.
Now that right there could lead to all kinds of stuff. I mean, if that got big enough, then can you imagine all of a sudden a high school kid, when he's sending his tape and his credentials to the college because he wants a scholarship, he's also saying, by the way, here's my GameSense sports score and reputation or ranking or whatever.
You're exactly correct. And that is our goal, is we need to establish this as a de facto metric.
Yes.
Performance. And it
That's
is. And it is. We just haven't measured it yet. So just as it's like, okay, what's your 40 time? How much do you bench?
Right.
Good. Those are giving us clues into your success, your potential for success.
How wouldn't you like it if, like, Alabama was like every athlete they talked to, they would say like, hey, what's your GameSense score? Wouldn't that be cool?
Exactly what we're looking for. And it goes back to the point too, is like, okay, if I'm running, and I'm going to use some methodology, if I'm running a 5.40 time, which is not, I mean, I guess if you're a lineman, it's not bad, but it's not real fast for a wide receiver or DB or any of that. You're pretty slow, really slow. You're never going to run a 4.5. You will never run a 4.5 if you run a 5.5. But if you're not very good at this GameSense, your only way to go is up. You're going to get better at this if you put in the time. So that's I think really encouraging. This is something everybody can get better at.
I agree. Yeah, love it. Okay, how many employees now?
Gosh, no full-time employees. What we've done is we've worked with contractors only. So we have basically 5 co-founders.
Okay.
And those guys we're working every day.
Are you? And I'm guessing you're still just putting money in, quote, sort of burning cash, so to speak. You're not like actually making enough revenue to pay yourselves a bunch of salaries yet, or
not a bunch of salaries, but we pay ourselves to keep the lights on.
Okay.
keep my wife happy.
Yeah, right.
Right. I got to stay married during this.
Yeah. Okay. So you're making enough revenue. You're making enough revenue to bring a little payroll for people.
Absolutely. And we
Okay.
have just been raising a bridge round to
Oh,
get us, because we're really branching out. We've got great product market fit, people who love what we're doing, but it's a really bare bones Spartan approach, MVP still. We've
okay.
made it better and better. But we think that if we really want to bring this to the masses, we need to make it much more appealing visually and competitive wise and gamification, all those kind of buzzwords.
Mm-hmm.
And so our next milestone will be to do a complete UX UI redesign of the apps.
And you're raising some cash to do that, or are you passing out equity to developers, or both?
No, we just raised 240,000. We also just got brought into
Nice.
Techstars.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's fun. They gave us money out of that, and they're tremendous. I mean, wow.
Great.
Networks you get from these guys is just phenomenal.
Are you getting better at asking people for cash as you move along here?
I'm getting better. I wouldn't say it's my strongest suit, but yes. My other partner, Dave Rames, who even hooked us up through Paul,
Yeah,
that's his forte, and he's great. And I'm learning a lot from him to do this. It's a different skill set for sure.
Yes, it is. Yeah. If you've never done it, asking somebody to write a check for your product or your company, yeah, it's a humbling experience.
There is. It really is. But we're lucky that we have something that we're passionate about, and it's something that a lot of people are passionate about.
Yeah.
It's sports.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's fun. It's sports. It's kind of entertainment. Yeah, it's a cool thing to be associated with. I think as an investor, probably for certain investors, I would think it'd be a very interesting thing to be associated with.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah. So we're using that money. We're hiring people now.
Great. Good for you, man.
Doing
Good.
the UX UI. We're looking to do probably a seed round coming out of Techstars, which would be good. And then we have baseball and softball currently. And then with this Techstars comes a relationship with Tennis Australia, which is the entire governing body for all of tennis in Australia. They also do the Australian Open down there.
Okay.
So
very good. Very good.
We're expecting a pilot with them right now.
Making some progress. Things are starting to move for you a little bit. That's good.
They are. It's fun. It's exciting. It's kind of weird. It's scary a little bit. We're just scientists. This is what we built it for.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting about your story is you're also learning how to be a CEO kind of on the fly, right? Like it's not like you went to CEO school.
School of Hard Knocks. And I made a lot of mistakes. You're right.
How about, I know we're getting close to our time here. I should have booked you for longer than an hour. Let me ask you just one line piece of advice for first time entrepreneurs, and then maybe a one line piece of advice for first time CEOs. Can you give me both of those real quick?
Oh, geez. Okay. For entrepreneurs, I'd say the most important thing in my mind is to be passionate about what you're doing, because entrepreneurship, this is more than one line, is almost a mental disease in some ways. You have to be blindly passionate and blindly confident in what you're doing.
I love that.
And that's dangerous. So you better be sure what you're doing is you believe in it and you have a good idea and you can forward through it.
Blindly passionate. I like that. That's pretty good. I like that line. It's true. It's true, right? Because you were going to face so many hurdles and no's and pivots and challenges beyond anything you can possibly imagine. If you've never been an entrepreneur, I don't care how much I don't care what books you've read. I don't care what podcasts you've listened to. You are going to be faced with 100 times more than you anticipate. So if you're not blindly passionate, you will quit. You will not make it.
Exactly right. And that's the other thing. We're going a little further, and I'm cool to go over, Steve, if you want.
Okay, cool.
So much about business and why I feel like I fell right into it. A couple of reasons, but one of the main reasons is because it's like sports to me.
Yeah.
This is a competition.
It is.
This is just like, and it's on a team. It's a team sport, number one, not an individual sport. And everybody's trying to be good. It's just like being on a good team and in a league and, a competition with other teams out there.
And is it also kind of like when you were in high school, like you were probably one of the best kids on the team and you thought, man, I'm pretty good. And then you got to college and you're like, oh shit. Okay. These guys are all good.
It's exactly correct. As you begin to jump up in levels, everybody's good.
Everybody's
They
good.
would not be there if they weren't a good athlete, right?
Yeah. Right.
And back to our point, really what starts to differentiate you at that point is your mental game, your ability to put in the work,
Yes.
do that,
Yes.
to
Yes.
get to those higher levels.
Yeah. Anybody that's been, anytime I meet an entrepreneur that's had their business for, let's say, longer than 3 years, all of a sudden there's a little bit of an edge. There's a little bit of a spirit about them that is just tougher than regular people, right? There's just something super competitive, and I'm trying to think of, I don't know if edge is the right word. I'll give you a perfect example. I just went camping in the mountains on Saturday. I was kind of up there by myself somewhere, and I came across this couple that was at a campsite sitting next to the campfire, and I sat down next to the guy, and we're having a beer, and he owns a concrete company. And I told him I owned a recruiting firm, and he'd had it for like 3 or 4 years. And just right away, there's just this, there's this presence about entrepreneurs that have made it that far and have started to build business that is just powerful. And they're super passionate. They're committed. They're driven. There's an edge. There's I don't know what other words, doctor, you want to add into those, but there's something about those people, isn't there?
Well, you're one of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree completely. Again, it takes a specific mentality to do this, and some luck. No doubt about that. But we're in one of the most competitive environments there is.
No doubt about it. And then being a CEO, so now all of a sudden, so you got some people that, by the way, my kudos and compliments to the fact that you've been able to, talk your friends and acquaintances and have these relationships and say, guys, come on, help me build this thing. I can't pay you a whole bunch to get started. In fact, you might have to volunteer some time. I can give you maybe a little bit of an equity play, whatever. But the fact that you were able to circle this team of talent during that early phase when you couldn't pay them very much, and they've hung on, and now you're starting to raise cash. I mean, that's a major accomplishment. Just for the listeners, don't take that lightly if you're listening to this episode. To get that done, to talk people into helping you build it from the beginning when they're not hardly making anything, those aren't easy conversations to have.
You're selling a dream.
Yes.
That's not different than what we do regardless, but you're right about that. It's not like I'm making, we were fortunate to have really good people with us, and people that also saw that dream. And we are also, even in that instance, you need some traction or it's going to be really tough.
Well, right. You needed some traction, but I'm just trying to think about, because I was about to ask you, give the listeners some first-time CEO advice, but I can imagine you're calling one of your friends, right? Like the guy that was in the band.
Yeah.
And you're telling him like, hey, we're going to start this company. And he's probably thinking, okay, now Tom has never been a CEO. He's never been he's never built a business. He's never done it. Like, why would I?
Right.
But what have you learned as a young CEO? In other words, first time CEO now of this startup. What have you learned, and what advice would you give for the listeners?
So much advice I would give.
Yeah, right. That's like another hour podcast.
Yeah. I would say the most important thing to me is to surround yourself with smarter people than you are. Put yourself around people that know more than you, have had more experiences, and can cover up your weaknesses and blemishes.
Right.
Because you don't know everything. That's for damn sure. You'll never know everything. And so you've got to have people with you that do know more than you. And together, back to that team aspect, you're an organism. Now you can make better decisions because you all have these different kind of experiences and input to make quality decisions. And that's tough, working on any team too, because people have different opinions, people have different egos. But that's the only way you're going to go. What is that one adage? It's like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
I like that. That's pretty good. I like that. Who?
Mine.
That's pretty good. Tom, congratulations getting it to where it's at. And it sounds to me like there's been some really early hurdles and a lot of hard work and passion. And now you're about to hit kind of your first major tipping point, and you're about to round the corner, I think, on some things, right? I feel like you're about to start taking off. And if you raise get enough cash to hire even more developers and more people, I mean, yeah, it could start to go, right? When you do get that first, by the way, who's the most famous person you've pitched to, or famous team, or somebody you've pitched to where you wanted them to endorse the product? Anybody you want to highlight?
Well, I guess just recently, if you know who Brad Feld is.
Oh, you mean from
he's Mobius, and what's his other one that he's in now? I mean, he's the founder of Techstars.
Yeah, founder of Techstars. Sorry, I was having a brain cramp. Yeah. So you pitched in front of him.
Yeah, we've talked to him a bit. He's very interested in what we're doing.
Were you a little nervous preparing?
Yeah, you're always nervous for that kind of stuff. And I think last year we went over to do an accelerator with Adidas called Lead. That was nerve-wracking too. But you're starting to get more and more comfortable with this kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Baseball players, not yet. We need to get. That's what goes. The kind of guys we're getting into, which would be nice angel investors as well as endorsers.
The first time you have to pitch in front of a big-time famous coach or something, I want to know how that goes. Call me and tell me how that went.
I will.
Right. I want to know how that went. Congratulations on everything, my friend. I appreciate you being on the Riderflex podcast. And for the listeners, it's gamesensesports.com. gamesensesports.com. The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.